everyone, I'm here again. Now this time there's a face with the voice and yeah, welcome back. The first video that I filmed with the audio too was the declutter was quite popular. I've seen that a lot of you have subscribed after seeing that video, because YouTube is quite convenient in a way. It shows that where does your channel get the most traffic from. But anyway, I'm very happy that you're all here and that you have showed quite a lot of interest for me to continue doing also longer form videos. So I thought that since it's been quite popular lately amongst other creators to do a fall palette ranking or sort of videos about favorite fall palettes, so I thought I might also do that kind of video. Before we get to the actual palettes, I would like to emphasize that this isn't per se ranking the palettes. So all of these palettes, I like them very much, and since I did recently declutter my collection, all of these palettes are palettes that I actually use. So these are not in any particular order from the least favorite to most favorite. These are all just palettes that I generally like to use in fall time or inspire me to do fall themed makeup. Without further ado, let's get to the actual palettes part. So I have these categorized in three. I have quite many palettes in front of me on the table. So there are like three categories. There's the drugstore priced palettes, which there is actually only one. Then there is a few higher end palettes, and then I have some of the indie brand palettes. So I think there is quite a good variety in terms of different kind of palettes and also from different kinds of price points. And I do hope that this video might also inspire you to maybe use palettes that you have already in your collection, so we don't always need to just buy the new, even though new makeup is something that gets us all very excited often. But anyway, let's get to the first one. The drugstore part, and in the drugstore part I only have one palette, and it's this very huge, it's gonna cover my whole face. So this is the BeautyBay Earthy palette, and this has 42 pans in it, and this is just humongous. And I'm gonna open this now so we can see. I don't know where I'll be able to hold this to show it to you completely, but anyway, I think maybe like this we will fit to the frame. So I think what makes this palette particularly interesting during the fall is that I think that it has the fall leaf colors basically mixed in. So up here we have all the greens you can imagine, and then downward it turns into more yellow and more red one. And as I said in my declutter, I think this is one of the few 42 pan palettes that I do think is different enough in terms of the color story compared to the 16 pan version. So if you have the 16 pan version of this, it only has the greens, and the 42 pan does actually have the addition of these red and yellow and brown tones that aren't in the 16 pan or in the smaller 9 pan version. But this is definitely, I think, the ultimate fall leaf themed fall palette, and this definitely is something that inspires me every year to pull it out during the fall time. And it's also very affordable. I think the price of these, I think there's been a bit of increase in the price of these, but I do believe these are around 20 to 30 euros, and BeautyBay runs sales on their own brand really often. So I would just wait for a sale or see if there's a discount code and then buy this, because then you will be able to get a good offer on this. Okay, so from the very affordable to the more expensive. So next I will be showing all the higher end palettes that I put into this video and which inspire fall in me or remind me of fall, or I just gravitate towards them during the fall time. So first one is actually a new one. So this is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Fall Romance palette, and this is the sort of new ABH palette she launched this season. I think last year she came out with the Metal Rose palettes, and the year before that we had the, I don't remember the name of it, but it had this very, very pretty olive tones in it. But anyway, here's the Fall Romance, and then we'll flip it open, and this is what the beauty looks like inside. And I have to say, I have been very pleasantly surprised with this, considering that I initially thought that, well, I had some doubt whether it was quite versatile, but actually it does have quite a lot of versatility in it. So there are actually You have this burgundy, purple, and this is more a sort of pink iridescent shade. So you can get a pink themed look with this. Then you can actually go very neutral with this, so that we have these quite safe warm toned neutral colors. But also you can then get a green look out of this. So I actually made a reel one day using both of the green shades, and then I believe it was the shade Crown, which is a gold shade that shifts bitter green, and on top of matte green eyeshadow, this actually looks like a green shimmer. So there is actually quite a lot of versatility in this palette. Only thing you should notice is that if you're a fair-skinned person like I am, the looks will be very dark. So the only lighter blending out shade is this one Leather in the corner. But all the rest of the shades, you either really have to apply them quite carefully or blend them out to sheer, make them look more sheer. But this is essentially a very sultry palette, but you can, if you're very careful with the mattes on a fair skin tone, get this to look also quite office appropriate or more toned down. But I think for someone with a medium or dark skin, they will truly enjoy this, because these colors will then suit those kind of persons really well. But I'd say definitely if you've been thinking about buying this, the shadow quality is very good, and I definitely think the color story is quite pretty, and there is, I think, a lot more versatility to it than the palette may initially seem when you see the photos online. So next is a bit of an older palette. It's the Naughty Nude palette by Huda Beauty. This is, I think, at this point a couple of years old, and let's see if I can get this open. Yeah. So here it is, and I think this is the sort of essential warm-toned pink fall palette that I think a lot of us like generally, and also gravitate towards when it's fall. So this has the sort of very light pink tones, but also you get quite deep reds, and then we have the very traditional golds, and then there's also these more purpley dark shades that I think do make this quite this sort of deep burgundy fall palette that I know a lot of people gravitate towards during the fall time. I'd say the only minus thing is, and I know a lot of people don't like the jelly shade, I honestly could also do without it. I usually put this shade a little bit to my brush and then pick up a few of the shimmers with it, and that way it sort of works as a shimmer base for me, but alone it's a pretty useless shade, and I think it would be good if she no longer put this in her palettes. I know in the newer palettes she doesn't put these anymore, they are more like cream shadows. I haven't got the palettes from her that have now the new cream shadow shade, so I can't of course speak about those. But anyway, I think if you have this palette, I definitely think now is a good time of the year to dig it out and use it, because this is truly a very beautiful palette. And I would also say that if you like your pinks and purples and reds, this is a very good choice all around the year. So next is a palette that unfortunately was a limited edition palette, so you can't get this anymore, and you will be seeing my ring light now. So anyway, this is the Byredo Remembrance palette. This was a limited edition palette, and Byredo does these palettes. I believe they have come out with once a year with these bigger ones. They usually have these smaller quints. But anyway, the design of it, the cover, this is very beautiful, and here, once you open it, this is what it looks like. So about this color story, this is, I think, a color story, especially in terms of seasons of change for me. So during the summertime and in midwinter, I don't think this is something I will reach for, but spring and I think now in fall, I think there's something in the tones that makes it very attractive during the spring and fall times. I think for fall especially, you have this dark brown corner right here that allows the palette to have quite a lot of depth. But you also have these very sort of warm peachy colors here. And something that makes this palette a bit different to other perhaps neutral palettes is that it has few spots of silver in it. The shimmer shades in this one are quite satin-like, so if you're looking for very sparkly shimmers, then this is not the palette for you. However, I do think mature lids and also lids that have a lot of texture, and I know there are generally some people that just don't like very glittery shadows. I think for those people, these type of shadows will be very flattering and they will like working with them. The matte quality in this is also very, very spectacular. I haven't had any issues except the one. This dark brown shimmer shade down here, I think, is the only one that is a bit patchy, and I usually have to work quite a lot with this to get this work, but no, but all the other shades in this are very, very good. And well, definitely considering that I think the price of these is, depending where you live, like between 90 and 100 euros. So you are getting your money's worth with this. But unfortunately, you can't get this anymore. But if you manage to grab this on this year's spring, then I would definitely dig it out now and use it to create some nice, awesome looks. Next one is a bit of a classic. So we have the Natasha Denona My Dream palette. And let's open it up and try to see that it doesn't reflect the light here. So I think, because this was Natasha Denona's, I think her like big palette release last autumn, I think you have seen this by now quite many times, and there are plenty of reviews from this on YouTube. And for me, this I think is one of the very, like, this sort of, when you think about fall tones, this is very traditional fall toned palette. It has some of these very nice orange tones here. I know the pumpkin spice makeup theme has been now very popular, so you can definitely get that kind of looks with this one. But what I particularly like about this palette is that it also offers relatively a lot of depth. So we have quite a lot of deepening up shades in this corner, so you will be able to get versatility in terms of looks. There's also the very fun multi-crown shade here. I don't think my phone camera will be able to pick it up, but it sort of brings something extra to the palette. The shimmer shades in this one, they aren't as sparkly. I know Natasha Denona has put in her newer palettes this more sparklier shimmer shades that a lot of, I think, her fans were asking for, but because this is in the bit older formula, these are more toned down shimmers, but they are all still very beautiful. And I think if you're looking for this sort of quintessential autumn palette, you should still get this one if the color story appeals to you. Next palettes will be the indie brand palettes, and we shall start with one of my favorite indie brands, which is of course Oden's Eye. And from Oden's Eye, I only chose one palette to this video. And I think before we start, I should emphasize that I did recently buy a couple of new Oden's Eye palettes. I bought the Little Ghost from the Angelica Newquist collaboration. However, I'm still in the middle of sort of getting sort of vibes of the palette and still reviewing it and using it. Though in terms of color story, I think I can already say that it's probably not going to be a palette that I will be using on fall, but most likely closer to summer, because the Little Ghost, even though it's Halloween themed, is actually quite brightly colored palette, and most likely something that isn't actually going to appeal to me that much during the fall season. However, now to the actual palette that I chose for this video, and for this I chose the Saga of Freja, the cat with the golden carriage. So this was came in the Saga of Freja collection a few years ago. Yeah, I think it's that long from the collection already, and 3 palettes came with the collection, and this is the one that I particularly chose for the fall ranking. And these are the beautiful colors. Now, what I like about this is that for me it's a fall palette with a bit of a twist. So we have this sort of very traditional brown and warm orange tones, but then we have the pops of mints and green in here. And I think this sort of combines fall for me in a very interesting way. The shimmers are something that I definitely, that if you have this or if you're eyeing for this, I'm not actually sure that can you still buy this from their website, because I do know that they still carry some of their older palettes, but with this one, I'm not sure. But if you are able to get this from the shimmers, I really should emphasize that these are the more kind of glittery kinds of shimmers, so I would recommend using glitter glue or something else to make them stick better, and definitely apply them with your fingers, because at least for me, none of these apply very well if you try them with a brush. But if you're okay with applying the fingers and using glitter glue, then I can say that you will enjoy this palette a lot, and you will be able to create some very interesting color combinations with this because of the colors that are in this. So the next 2 palettes I will be showing as a duo, because they are essentially a companion palettes, and they are a bit difficult, I think, to use on their own unless you either really prefer shimmers or chest mattes, or if you are a makeup artist. So these are the GlamShop palettes. I believe the collection name of this was Mandala, and these came a couple of years ago. They have now, I think, re-released this collection and redone some of the products, and I know this matte palette that I will be showing you first that this one is actually still available. It's very a shame that the shimmer one isn't, because that too I think is very, very, very pretty. But first let's go with the matte one. So what makes this, I think, me, in terms of my collection, very unique is the tones of browns, and I already discussed it in my declutter. So it has a bit of warm tone browns, but it also has this sort of more gray and purple toned browns in it, and those kind of browns I actually don't have in a lot of my other neutral palettes. I think for a makeup artist this would actually be a very good addition to your kit. But also just the matte quality. I think GlamShop is one of those brands that is very decently priced. Their palette pricing, depending are you buying the 9 pans or these sort of very big, I think there's, I don't actually know, I think 30 shades or something in these bigger ones. So the price range is somewhere between 10 and 30 euros, and GlamShop runs sales also quite often, so you are usually able to get a good deal with their palettes. But this matte palette, I think now in combination with the shimmer one, so this one unfortunately which isn't available anymore, is just the perfect fall tones, because you get this sort of very unique tones in terms of browns, and then you have these beautiful variation of shimmers. And as you can see, this has sort of this sort of dark, almost taupey shimmers, but they're also this sort of orange bronzes, and also these more traditional gold tone shimmers. So in combination with the matte palette, these two are the sort of palettes that I very much use during the fall time. And I think if you did manage to grab these when they were available, and if you still want to grab the matte palette that is available, then I think you will be able to create some very wonderful fall looks. And also I think for different kind of fall parties, these will create very glam looks. Okay, so the next palette is from another favorite indie brand from Sweden. So this is the GlossGods New Neutrals palette, and it is doing something with my lighting setup, so ignore that. So I think because nudes have been very trendy this fall due to the Natasha Denona palette, and also a couple of other very high profile nude neutral palettes that have been released. So I have been also trying to, I have a certain budget that I use towards makeup during the month. So something that I think has been holding off from me buying new neutral palettes has been that I've been also trying to think the neutrals that I already have from my collection. And I definitely think that if you have this GlossGods new neutrals palette in your collection, then you should probably consider, do you really need another neutral palette? If you think you do, then go ahead, because I think we should all be able to enjoy the makeup we want within the budget we have put towards. So of course you shouldn't go in depth in terms of buying makeup. But anyway, about this palette, what makes this very special is that GlossGods palettes have these sort of special shades in them. So the shimmers, all of these shimmers have some type of shift to them. It's something that my camera will not be able to pick up. But this, for example, shifts more towards green. This is very sort of peachy golden shift to it. And unfortunately, this shade is the only one that doesn't work. I told it in my declutter that when I received this was already quite dry, and now it has dried out completely. But all the other shades still work very perfectly, and I think also this has very good variation of a matte shade. So we have these very light shades, but also we have these deepening up shades. So I think if you're looking for your essential neutral palette, but you also wanted to have some special shades, then I think the GlossGods palette is a very good choice, and I would still recommend buying it, even though this is also beginning to be a bit of an older palette. And I do actually believe GlossGods said in their Instagram post recently that they will be restocking all of their palettes, so keep an eye on the restock, because they are also a smaller indie brand, so they can't keep all of their products in stock as consistently as perhaps some of the more bigger brands. But definitely a recommendation from their restock. Okay, so we're on the last palette, and last palette is a very affordable but a very good indie brand. So this is Cosmic Brushes, and this is the beautiful Muse palette. I definitely think that Cosmic Brushes, they are quite hyped, but at least for me, there is a very good reason for it. So this is how the Muse looks like. And I think because Cosmic Brushes has come out with so many palettes that have quite many bright colors. I think this was a very good change from them because this still has some colors. It's very muted, but it also has neutral tones up here, here even. I think this murky green shade can be more counted towards as neutral than a colorful shade. But I think it's still, if you are a person who likes color, this still does offer also a lot of colorful options to your look. So we have this sort of bright purples here, there is the yellow, and then we have these green tones. So I think this is a good palette for someone who might want to dip into some color, but also to someone who's a color lover but wants something a bit more neutral to their collection. And you can't beat the price of this. These are very affordable. I think these are about 20 euros or a bit over. And I think because this, for someone living in Europe, so these come from UK, so the shipping times aren't horrible in these, and they are actually very easy to order. But anyway, definitely a recommendation, and for the price, especially GlossGods matte formula is very good, but I also think their shimmers are very amazing, and a lot of these shimmers do have some type of shift to them. So for example, this pink one has a golden shift to it, and then there's this sort of white iridescent topper shade that also I think has like a lilac or pink shift. So if you are looking for a more sort of neutral options that's very fall appropriate from the cosmic brushes, then this is definitely a recommendation from the brand. So those were my fall palette recommendations. Comment down below what did you think about them. I know there was quite many of them, but I wanted to really include palettes from different kind of price categories there, so there would be something for everyone. And if you want more of these sort of ranking videos or just videos showing different kinds of products with themes, then comment below, like the video. And of course, if you like my content generally, then subscribe. I think aside from this, I will be filming a makeup news video, which will be out, I think, before this one. So definitely that is also something to wait for. And also, like I said on the declutter video, more daily content from me will be reels, because those are like quick to film when I get ready to work. But anyway, I thank you for the time that you have taken to watch this video, and hopefully I will see you again. Bye!